My name is Sophia, and I am 41 years old. I am the Chief Medical Officer at a regional health insurance provider, a position I worked incredibly hard to achieve against all odds. I have a beautiful home, a career I'm proud of, and a life that the broken teenager I once was could never have imagined. But getting here cost me everything. My family, my childhood, my sense of belonging, all of it was stripped away before I even had a chance to grow up. This is a story I've kept locked inside for over 2 decades. It's painful to revisit, but I've come to realize that my silence has only protected the people who hurt me. Maybe by speaking out, I can help someone else who's going through something similar. Maybe I can show them that being abandoned by your family doesn't have to be the end of your story, it can be the beginning. I grew up believing that family was everything. My parents drilled that into me from the time I could walk. Blood is thicker than water, my father would say. Family takes care of family, my mother would echo. They were liars. When I needed them most, when my life literally hung in the balance, they turned their backs on me. They called me names that still echo in my nightmares. They made me feel like my existence was a mistake, an inconvenience, a problem to be solved rather than a daughter to be loved. And then, 23 years later, they came crawling back, begging for the very thing they had denied me, a chance at life. This is my story. From the outside, the Harrison family looked perfect. My father, William Harrison, was a successful accountant who owned his own firm. My mother, Diane, was a homemaker who hosted elaborate dinner parties and volunteered at the church. My older brother, Thomas, was the star quarterback at his high school, bound for a football scholarship. My older sister, Rebecca, was the beauty queen, winning pageants and dating the most popular boys. And then there was me, Sophia, the afterthought. I was born 8 years after Rebecca, a surprise that my mother never let me forget. We weren't planning on having more children, she would say whenever someone commented on the age gap. But accidents happen. Accident, that's what I was to them. An accident. While Thomas and Rebecca were showered with attention, praise, and resources, I existed in the shadows. My accomplishments went unnoticed. My needs went unmet. When Thomas needed new football equipment, my father wrote the check without blinking. When Rebecca wanted an expensive prom dress, my mother drove her to 3 different cities to find the perfect one. When I asked for art supplies for my passion, painting, I was told we couldn't afford frivolous things. I learned early on that my place in the family was to be quiet, to be invisible. To not ask for too much. And for the most part, I complied. I got good grades without tutoring. I made my own clothes when the hand-me-downs from Rebecca didn't fit. I taught myself to cook when my mother was too busy with her social obligations to make dinner. I survived by being self-sufficient, by not needing anything from anyone. But there are some things you can't handle on your own. Some things that require the people who are supposed to love you to actually show up. I was 16 years old when I found out exactly how alone I really was. It happened during gym class. We were running laps around the track when suddenly, my heart started racing uncontrollably. Not the normal racing you get from exercise, this was different. It felt like a wild animal was trapped in my chest, beating against my ribcage, trying to break free. I collapsed on the track. The next thing I remember is waking up in an ambulance, paramedics hovering over me, electrodes attached to my chest. "Stay with us, sweetheart," one of them said. "You're having a cardiac episode." Cardiac episode. I was 16 years old and having a cardiac episode. At the hospital, doctors ran test after test. My parents showed up eventually, 2 hours after I was admitted. Thomas had a football game, and they couldn't just leave in the middle of it. When the cardiologist came to deliver the results, his face was grave. "Your daughter has a condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy," he explained to my parents. It's a genetic disorder that causes the heart muscle to thicken abnormally. In Sophia's case, it's particularly severe. "What does that mean?" my father asked, checking his watch. "It means she's at high risk for sudden cardiac death. The episode she had today was a warning. Without treatment, another episode could be fatal." That got their attention. My mother's hand flew to her chest. "Fatal, but she's just a child." which is why we need to act quickly, the doctor continued. She needs surgery, a septal myectomy to remove the excess heart tissue. It's a complex procedure, but it's performed by specialists with excellent success rates. Without it, I'm afraid her prognosis is very poor. I lay in the hospital bed, listening to them discuss my life like it was a business problem to be solved. I was terrified. I was 16 years old, and I had just learned that my heart was trying to kill me. What does something like this cost? My father asked. The doctor hesitated. The surgery itself, plus hospital stay and rehabilitation, typically runs around $150,000. However, most insurance plans cover a significant portion. Our insurance has a $50,000 cap on surgical procedures, my father interrupted. I checked the policy last year when Thomas needed his knee surgery. Then you'd be looking at approximately $100,000 out of pocket, the doctor said. But I must stress, this is not optional. This is life-saving surgery. My father nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. We'll need to discuss this as a family. The doctor left. My parents exchanged a look that I couldn't interpret at the time, but would come to understand all too well. Rest now, Sophia, my mother said, patting my hand with all the warmth of a stranger. We'll figure this out. But they didn't figure it out. They had already made their decision. 2 days later, I was discharged from the hospital with strict instructions to avoid physical activity and a bottle of beta blockers that would buy me some time, but wouldn't fix the underlying problem. That evening, my father called a family meeting. Thomas was home from college for the weekend. He had gotten his football scholarship and was now a freshman at a Division I school. Rebecca had driven in from her apartment across town, where she lived with her boyfriend while working as a receptionist. I sat at the dining room table, still weak, still terrified, waiting for my family to tell me how they were going to save my life. My father stood at the head of the table like he was conducting a board meeting. He had printed out documents, insurance statements, bank balances, investment portfolios. Here's the situation, he began. Sophia needs surgery. The cost after insurance is approximately $100,000. We don't have that kind of liquid cash. What about your retirement accounts? I asked quietly. My father looked at me like I had suggested burning down the house. Those are for retirement, Sophia. We can't just drain them he stopped himself. For what? I pressed. For keeping me alive. For anything, he amended. That's our future security. What about the college fund? I asked. Mom said there was money set aside for my college. My parents exchanged another look. My mother cleared her throat. There was a college fund, she said carefully. But when Thomas's scholarship only covered tuition and not room and board, we had to reallocate some of it. And then Rebecca needed help with her apartment deposit, and there's nothing left, I finished. You spent my college fund on them. We were going to replenish it, my mother said defensively. You're only 16, we had time. Apparently not, I said bitterly. Thomas shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Look, I'm sorry about the college fund, Sophia, but that's in the past. What do we do now? My father sighed. I've run the numbers every way possible. The only way we could afford this surgery is if we took out a second mortgage on the house. That would mean significantly higher monthly payments for the next 20 years. So do it, I said. It's my life. It's not that simple, my mother said. We've worked so hard to build this life. The house, our reputation in the community, your father's business, all of it depends on financial stability. If we overextend ourselves and something goes wrong, something is already wrong, I shouted. I'm going to die, the doctor said so. The doctor said you're at risk, my father corrected. That's not the same thing. People live with heart conditions all the time. You take your medication, you avoid strenuous activity, you live carefully, and wait for my heart to explode. Sophia, don't be dramatic, my mother chided. Dramatic? I'm not being dramatic. I collapsed on the track. My heart stopped beating normally. The doctor said without surgery, I could die at any moment. How is that being dramatic? Rebecca finally spoke up. Look, I feel for you, Soph, I really do. But Mom and Dad have a point. $100,000 is a lot of money, And it's not like you've contributed anything to this family. You don't work. You don't bring in any income, you're still a kid. I stared at my sister in disbelief. I'm 16 years old. Of course I don't bring in income, I'm a child. I'm your sister, half-sister, Thomas muttered under his breath. The room went silent. I turned to him slowly. What did you say? Thomas at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. Nothing. Forget it. No, what did you say? My father held up his hand. Thomas, that's enough. Sophia, the truth is, this is a family decision and we all have to agree. And right now, the consensus seems to be that the risk doesn't justify the cost. The risk, I repeated. The risk of me dying doesn't justify the cost of keeping me alive. You're twisting my words. I'm repeating your words. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. You're telling me that I'm not worth $100,000. That's what you're saying. My life is not worth the cost of a second mortgage. My mother reached for my arm. Sophia, sit down. You're getting worked up, and that's not good for your condition. I pulled away from her. My condition. You mean the condition that's going to kill me because my own family won't help me? We didn't say we wouldn't help, my father protested. We said we need to explore other options. Maybe there's a charity or a payment plan, or maybe you just don't want to spend money on your accident, I spat. My mother's face went pale. Who told you about that? You did. Every time someone asks about the age gap, every time you introduce me as your surprise. I'm not stupid. I know I wasn't wanted. I've always known. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, my father spoke. His voice was cold, controlled, and utterly devastating. You want the truth, Sophia? Fine, here's the truth. We've given you 16 years of our lives. 16 years of feeding you, clothing you, housing you. 16 years of sacrificing for a child we never planned to have. And now you want us to destroy our financial future, Thomas's future, Rebecca's future, our retirement, for a surgery that might not even work. Dad, Thomas started. No, she wanted the truth. She's getting it. My father looked at me with an expression I will never forget. It was contempt, pure, undisguised contempt. You have been a burden on this family since the day you were born, he said. And I'm sorry, but I'm not going to let that burden destroy us. Burden. That word broke something inside me that I didn't know could be broken. I had always suspected that I wasn't loved the way Thomas and Rebecca were loved. I had felt it in 1,000 small ways. The overlooked birthdays, the canceled outings, the dismissive comments. But I had never heard it stated so plainly, so cruelly. I was a burden. My life was not worth the cost. I don't remember leaving the dining room. I don't remember going to my bedroom or locking the door. The next thing I recall clearly is sitting on my floor in the dark, my back against my bed, my heart pounding dangerously fast, ironic, given the circumstances. I cried until I had nothing left. Then I sat in the emptiness, trying to figure out what to do. I was 16 years old. I had no money, no resources, no one in my corner. My heart was a ticking time bomb, and the people who were supposed to protect me had just told me I wasn't worth saving. What do you do when the whole world tells you that you don't matter? Some people give up, some people disappear. I got angry. The next morning, I woke up with a new clarity. If my family wouldn't save me, I would save myself. I started researching. I spent hours at the school library, reading about my condition, about treatment options, about financial assistance programs. I learned about hospital charity care, about nonprofit organizations that help patients with medical costs, about clinical trials that provide free treatment. I made lists. I made phone calls. I wrote letters. It was exhausting work, especially while managing my condition. The beta blockers made me tired, and I had to constantly monitor my heart rate. But I refused to give up. 3 weeks into my research, I found it. A teaching hospital 2 states away that was conducting a clinical trial for a new surgical technique for hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. They were looking for patients exactly like me, young, otherwise healthy, with severe cases that required intervention. The surgery would be free. All I had to do was get there and commit to 5 years of follow-up appointments. I applied immediately. I had to forge my parents' signature on the consent forms. They wouldn't have signed them voluntarily. But I didn't care anymore. They had made their position clear. I was on my own. 2 weeks later, I got the call. I had been accepted into the trial. The surgery was scheduled for the following month. I didn't tell my parents. I packed a bag. I took the $300 I had saved from babysitting and birthday money over the years. I left a note on my bed. Not an explanation, not an apology, just 3 words. Don't look for me. And I walked out the door. The Greyhound bus ride was long, 18 hours through the heartland of America. I watched the landscape change through the window, feeling like I was shedding my old life with every passing mile. When I arrived at the hospital, I was terrified. I was 16, alone, about to undergo major heart surgery with no family to hold my hand. The nurses looked at me with a mixture of pity and admiration when they learned my story. "You're a brave girl," one of them told me. "Not many people could do what you've done." I didn't feel brave. I felt desperate, but I took the compliment anyway. The surgery was on a Tuesday morning. I remember being wheeled into the operating room, looking up at the bright lights, praying to a God I wasn't sure I believed in. "Please let me survive. Please give me a chance to live. Please." I woke up 3 days later in the ICU. My heart was beating. Steadily, normally, beautifully. The surgery had been a success. I didn't go back home. There was nothing to go back to. The hospital social worker helped me navigate the legal system. Because I was a minor who had been medically neglected by her parents, I qualified for emergency emancipation. The court granted it within weeks. I was 17 years old and legally an adult. The next few years were the hardest of my life. I finished high school through a GED program while working 2 jobs, waitressing during the day, stocking shelves at a grocery store at night. I slept in a series of cheap apartments, sometimes with roommates, sometimes alone, but I never stopped pushing forward. I got into college on a full scholarship. My grades had always been good, and my personal essay about overcoming abandonment moved the admissions committee. I majored in biology with a pre-med focus. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to help people who were going through what I had gone through. Medical school was even harder. The workload was crushing, and I was doing it all without a safety net. When other students went home for holidays, I picked up extra shifts at the hospital cafeteria. When they called their parents for emotional support, I called my therapist. But I made it. I graduated in the top 10% of my class. My residency was in cardiology, fitting, given my history. I specialized in treating congenital heart conditions, becoming an advocate for patients whose families failed them. After my residency, I took an unusual path. Instead of going into private practice, I joined a health insurance company as a medical director. I wanted to work from the inside to change the system that had nearly failed me. I wanted to make sure that when families couldn't or wouldn't pay, there were still options for the patients who needed care. I climbed the corporate ladder with the same determination that had got me through surgery alone at 16. By the time I was 35, I was the chief medical officer, the youngest in the company's history. I had the final say on all major claims, including appeals for denied coverage. I had built a life beyond anything my family had thought I was worth, and I had done it entirely on my own. During all those years, I never contacted my family. At first, I was too focused on survival. Then I was too focused on building my career. And eventually, I realized that I simply didn't want to. They had made their feelings clear. I was a burden not worth saving. What was there to say after that? I heard updates occasionally through social media or mutual acquaintances from my hometown. Thomas had played professional football for a few years before a knee injury ended his career. He was now a high school coach, married with 3 kids. Rebecca had gotten married, divorced, remarried, and seemed to be living comfortably off her current husband's money. My parents had retired and were living in Florida, enjoying the comfortable life they had prioritized over my survival. I felt nothing when I saw pictures of them at family gatherings, smiling, looking happy. They had gotten what they wanted, a burden-free existence. Good for them. I had my own life now. A beautiful condo in the city, a career I was proud of, friends who had become my chosen family, a partner, Marcus, who knew my whole history and loved me anyway. I was complete. I didn't need them. Or so I thought. It was an ordinary Wednesday when everything changed. I was in my office, reviewing a stack of appeal cases that had been escalated to my level. These were the complex ones: expensive treatments, disputed diagnoses, situations where a simple yes or no wouldn't suffice. My assistant Priya knocked on my door. "Doctor Mitchell," I had taken Marcus's last name when we got married. "I have another appeal for your review. This one is unusual." "How so?" "The patient's family has been calling nonstop, trying to expedite the review. They're claiming urgent circumstances." And she hesitated. "The patient's last name is Harrison." My blood turned to ice. "Harrison, William Harrison, age 74, he needs a liver transplant." The initial claim was denied because of some pre-existing condition technicalities, and the family is appealing. She placed the file on my desk. I stared at it like it was a poisonous snake. "Thank you, Priya, I'll handle it from here." She left. I sat motionless for a long moment before finally reaching for the file. The first page was a photo. An old man, gaunt and yellow-skinned from liver failure. He looked nothing like the strong, imposing figure from my childhood memories. But it was him, William Harrison, my father. I read through the file with clinical detachment, or at least I tried to. Cirrhosis of the liver caused by years of heavy drinking. He needed a transplant within months, or he would die. The surgery and recovery would cost upwards of $500,000. The initial denial was based on a policy exclusion for conditions caused by substance abuse. It was a gray area. The exclusion was meant to prevent coverage for active addicts, and my father had apparently been sober for 3 years. The family was arguing that he qualified for coverage under normal criteria. They weren't wrong. There was a case to be made for approval, but there was also a case to be made for denial. And I was the one who got to decide. I hadn't even finished reading the file when my phone rang. An outside line, unusual since most calls went through Priya first. I answered without thinking. "Doctor Mitchell, Sophia." The voice hit me like a physical blow. It was older, thinner, but unmistakable, my mother. "How did you get this number?" I asked, my voice flat. I called the main line and explained that I was your mother. They transferred me. She sounded breathless, nervous. "Sophia, I know it's been a long time. 23 years. "Yes, I know. And I know things were said." "Things were said," I interrupted. "Is that what we're calling it? You told me I was a burden. Dad said my life wasn't worth $100,000. You let me walk out the door at 16 years old, knowing I might die, and you never came looking for me. We didn't know you were sick. I mean, we knew. But we didn't think it was that serious. The doctor told you I could die. He said that in front of me in my hospital room. Fatal, that was the word he used." Silence on the other end. "Why are you calling?" I asked, though I already knew. "Your father is dying, Sophia. His liver is failing. He needs a transplant, and the insurance company denied our claim. But then we found out you work there, that you're in charge of these decisions, and we thought. You thought I would approve the claim. He's your father," I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "He was never my father. A father doesn't tell his 16-year-old daughter that she's not worth saving. A father doesn't let his child walk into the night alone, facing death, rather than inconvenience himself financially. Sophia, please, he's changed. We've all changed. We've regretted what happened every single day." "Have you?" I cut in. "Have you really? Because it's been 23 years and this is the first time you've reached out. It took your husband dying for you to pick up the phone, so forgive me if I doubt the sincerity of your regret." My mother started crying. Part of me, the wounded child who had never stopped longing for her love, wanted to comfort her, but the adult I had become knew better. "I'm not calling to ask for forgiveness," she sobbed. "I'm calling to ask for mercy. Whatever we did to you, your father doesn't deserve to die for it." "Didn't I deserve to live?" I asked quietly. "Didn't I deserve parents who would fight for me?" "Of course you did, and we failed you, I know that, but punishing your father now won't undo the past. It will just add more tragedy to an already tragic situation." I was quiet for a long moment. "I'll review the file," I finally said. I'll make a decision based on the medical evidence and policy guidelines. That's all I can promise. Sophia, goodbye, mother. I hung up before she could say anything else. A week later, I drove to Florida. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I needed to see them. Maybe I needed to look my father in the eye before making my decision. Maybe I just needed closure. The house was a modest retirement villa in a gated community. Nothing like the grand home of my childhood. I wondered what had happened to all that money they had been so desperate to protect. Thomas answered the door. He was heavier now, his football glory days long behind him. He stared at me without recognition for a moment, then his eyes widened. Sophia, hello, Thomas. He stepped aside to let me in, too shocked to say anything. The living room was small and cluttered, with hospital equipment tucked into corners. A hospital bed dominated the space, and in that bed lay my father. He was barely recognizable. The liver failure had turned his skin yellow, shrunk his frame to almost nothing. Tubes connected him to machines that beeped and whirred. His eyes were closed. Rebecca was sitting by his side. She looked up when I entered, and her face went through a series of emotions: surprise, guilt, hope, fear. Sophia, she breathed. You came. I came. My mother emerged from the kitchen, her face tear-stained. She rushed toward me like she wanted to embrace me, but stopped when she saw my expression. Thank you for coming, she said. Thank you for giving us a chance to. I'm not here for you, I interrupted. I'm here for me. I need to see him. I need to understand what I'm deciding. My father's eyes fluttered open at the sound of my voice. He turned his head slowly, painfully, and looked at me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Sophia, he finally whispered, you're alive. No thanks to you, he flinched. I deserve that. I deserve worse. I walked closer to the bed, looking down at the man who had shaped so much of my life, both by what he gave me and what he withheld. I read your file, I said. The cirrhosis is from drinking, the same drinking you used to do when I was a child, the drinking that made you mean and cold. It finally caught up to you. It did, he admitted. And I've had 3 years of sobriety to think about all the damage I did when I was drinking, all the people I hurt, starting with you. I've had 23 years to think about it, I replied. 23 years without a family. 23 years of holidays alone, of graduations with no one in the audience, of building a life from nothing because the people who should have supported me threw me away. I know, tears leaked from his yellowed eyes. I've followed your career, Sophia. I've read every article, every interview. I've watched you become this incredible woman, and I've known that I had nothing to do with it. That I tried to destroy you, and you survived anyway. I didn't survive because of some inner strength, I said. I survived because I had no other choice. You made sure of that. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I was a selfish, cowardly man who let fear and alcohol control his decisions, and I lost my daughter because of it. I looked at him, really looked. Past the medical equipment, past the yellow skin and wasted muscles. I saw the man who had taught me to ride a bike before he decided I wasn't worth his time. The man who had called me his little artist before resentment replaced affection. I saw the father I had once believed he could be. Why didn't you come for me? I asked, the question I had held inside for 2 decades. When I left, why didn't you try to find me? He closed his eyes, more tears falling. Because I was ashamed. I knew what I had done was unforgivable. I told myself you were better off without us, that you would build a better life away from my poison. It was easier to believe that than to face what I had done. You were right about one thing, I said. I was better off without you. I just wish I had known that before I spent my childhood waiting for you to love me. The room was silent, except for the beeping of machines. I returned to my office the next day with a clarity I hadn't expected. I called in my medical review team. We went through the file together, analyzing every detail. The pre-existing condition exclusion was ambiguous enough that it could go either way. There were arguments for denial, arguments for approval. In the end, the decision was mine. I thought about revenge. I would be lying if I said I didn't. Here was my chance to let my father feel what I had felt. The terror of being denied life-saving care. The despair of knowing your fate was in someone else's hands, and they had chosen to let you die. But revenge is a poison. I had spent my whole adult life becoming someone my younger self could be proud of. Was I really going to throw that away for the satisfaction of watching a dying old man suffer? I thought about my mother's words on the phone. Punishing your father now won't undo the past. She was right, it wouldn't. Nothing could undo the past, but I could shape the future. I could decide what kind of person I wanted to be. I approved the claim, not because he deserved it. Not because I had forgiven him. I approved it because the medical evidence supported coverage, and I refused to let my personal history compromise my professional integrity. I approved it because I was not my father. I would not let someone die over money when I had the power to save them. I approved it because, in the end, I needed to prove to myself that I was the bigger person. The transplant surgery took place 3 weeks later. It was successful. My father was given a second chance at life, a chance I had never received from him. He tried to contact me afterward. Letters, phone calls, emails. He wanted to thank me. He wanted to apologize properly. He wanted to reconcile. I didn't respond. It wasn't about anger anymore. It wasn't about punishment. It was about peace. I had spent 23 years healing from the wounds my family had inflicted. Opening that door again, allowing them back into my life, that would only reopen those wounds. Some relationships are beyond repair. Some bridges, once burned, are better left in ashes. I wrote them one letter, just one. To the Harrison family, I approved Dad's insurance claim because it was the right thing to do medically and professionally. That is the extent of what I can offer you. I have built a life without you. A good life, full of love and purpose and meaning. That life does not have room for the people who abandoned me when I needed them most. I don't hate you. Hate requires energy, and I've spent too many years giving you my energy. What I feel is something closer to indifference. You are strangers who happen to share my DNA. Nothing more. Dad, I'm glad the surgery worked. I hope you use your second chance to become a better person than you were in my childhood, but I won't be around to see it. This is goodbye. Please respect my wishes and do not contact me again. Sophia, they didn't contact me again. Whether out of respect or shame or simply accepting that I meant what I said, I don't know. And I don't care. It's been 3 years since I approved my father's claim. I'm still the CMO of my company. I'm still married to Marcus, who has been my rock through all of this. I'm still living a life that the abandoned teenager I once was could barely imagine. I've started volunteering with organizations that help youth who have been abandoned or neglected by their families. I mentor young people navigating the medical system alone. I share my story when it might help someone else feel less alone. I've also started painting again, something I gave up when I was 16, when I had to trade creativity for survival. I'm not very good at it, but that's not the point. The point is reclaiming the parts of myself that my family tried to take from me. My therapist says I've made remarkable progress. The wounds from my childhood will always be there, she says, but they don't define me anymore. They're just part of my story, a painful part, but not the whole picture. I think about my parents sometimes. I wonder if my father is still alive, if the transplant gave him years or just months. I wonder if my mother ever truly understood how deeply she hurt me. I wonder if Thomas and Rebecca ever told their children about their lost aunt. But I don't dwell on these questions. They belong to a chapter of my life that is closed. If you've made it this far, thank you for reading my story. I shared it because I know there are others out there who have been called burdens by the people who were supposed to cherish them. Others who have been abandoned when they needed help most. Others who are wondering if they're worth fighting for. You are worth everything. The people who fail to see your worth are not a reflection of you, they're a reflection of themselves. Their inability to love you is their failure, not yours. I was 16 years old when I learned that I couldn't count on my family. It was the most painful lesson of my life, but it was also the most important. Because it taught me that I could count on myself, that I had the strength to survive, to thrive, to become someone extraordinary. When my father's claim landed on my desk, I had a choice. I could have let the past dictate my decision. I could have become the very thing I despised, Someone who lets people die because of personal grievances. I chose differently. Not because they deserved it, but because I deserved to be someone I was proud of. And in the end, that's the real victory. Not revenge, not karma. Just becoming a person who can look in the mirror and like what she sees. My name is Sophia. I am 41 years old. I was once called a burden by the family who should have loved me unconditionally. Now I carry the weight of my own life, and it is not a burden at all. It is a privilege.